What if Ahsoka stayed with the Jedi Order after being framed by Barriss? How would this have changed the Star Wars universe, and what would be the ultimate result of this change? Welcome to What If Star Wars Explained, where we take a part of the Star Wars mythos and change it in order to explore the consequences. To set up this scenario, we will have had Anakin convince Ahsoka to remain with the Order and continue her training as a Jedi. The last we know of interaction between Ahsoka and Anakin is when Anakin departs to go rescue the Chancellor above Coruscant, some mere hours before the events of Revenge of the Sith. Because of this is where I will begin the alternate story. As a side note, the reason we know this was their last meeting before encountering each other once again with Anakin, now Darth Vader, is because in Rebels, Ahsoka recalls it as the last time she saw Anakin. The rescue of the Chancellor would remain the same, with the tempting of Anakin by Palpatine and death of Count Dooku. Anakin would return home, and things would play out similarly as before, with Obi-Wan chasing General Grievous and Anakin experiencing visions of his wife dying in childbirth. Ahsoka would also be here to help Anakin, and above anyone else, she would see his inner turmoil and pain and attempt to comfort him. But same as before, Anakin would reveal nothing, afraid of revealing his breaking of the Jedi Code, and above all, disappointing his apprentice and friend after swaying her to remain with the Order, with the knowledge that he himself was not completely faithful to its cause. Palpatine would continue to corrupt Anakin, filling his mind with the dark side, and offering his services and saving his wife. This as regularly would alert Anakin to the true identity of Palpatine, and he would inform Master Windu of Palpatine's betrayal. Things would again play out the same, with Anakin ultimately turning to the dark side and becoming Darth Vader. Here I feel a need to explain why I don't believe Ahsoka staying would actually save Anakin from turning to the dark side. Anakin cares the most about his family above all else, and this is why in Rebels, Ahsoka is not able to sway Vader back to the light, but his son, who in fact he barely knows, is. The loss of Anakin's mother was a traumatizing event, because he felt as if he had lost his entire family. Padme has at this point in the story become his family, and at the time of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin would do anything to save her and his unborn children. This is why I don't believe he would ever be redeemable at this point. The power and faith of Luke and Luke alone was enough to bring him back, and even preventing his fall is something I see as nigh impossible. On top of this, I honestly don't see Anakin sharing his inner torment and problems with Ahsoka, as he never before has shown to open up to anyone, even Obi-Wan. At the time of Anakin's betrayal and the commencement of Order 66, Ahsoka would be at the temple, studying and learning, seeking a better foothold on the Jedi way. Order 66 would begin, however, and an eerie calm would sweep over the temple, as clones marching echoed through the halls. But at this time, Ahsoka and a few other Jedi would have fled. The reason for this being, I believe Rex, who at the time of Revenge of the Sith is still to our knowledge among the ranks of the 501st, would see the travesty both Anakin and his brothers were about to commit, and although not having all the details, I believe he would reach out to Ahsoka and tell her to flee the temple. He would of course be able to do this as a result of him removing the chip that forced the clones to obey Order 66. Ahsoka would flee the planet, and Order 66 would continue, with the Jedi becoming wanted fugitives and a majority of them executed. Ahsoka would then personally reach out to Obi-Wan, hearing about Anakin's betrayal through whispers, but not truly believing it, but also not reaching out to him in case it were true. Obi-Wan, now at the temple with Yoda, would have discovered the truth of Anakin's betrayal and be devastated. Ahsoka, however risky it may be, would then sneak onto the planet to rendezvous with her masters. Obi-Wan would protest, telling her she would not be prepared for what is to come, but the stubbornness of Ahsoka would win out. Together again, Obi-Wan would go to discuss with Padme, while Yoda prepared for his confrontation with the Emperor. Ahsoka would offer her assistance in fighting Palpatine, but Yoda would not wish to expose her to such pure hatred and evil, especially with the knowledge that she would stand no chance against his power. In the case of finding Anakin, again Ahsoka would offer, and this time demand, to accompany Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan would not even attempt to sway Ahsoka after seeing her dedication and desire to save her master from the clutches of the dark side. The two Jedi would then sneak onto Padme's ship and wait for their arrival at Anakin's location. On Mustafar, Anakin and Padme would embrace, with eventually Padme seeing the true evil within Anakin, now Darth Vader, at which point Obi-Wan would emerge from the ship, but this time accompanied by Ahsoka. Ahsoka would be in utter shock of the state of her former master, now Sith Lord. The very presence of Obi-Wan and Ahsoka would anger Anakin, as he would threaten them to join him or die along with the other Jedi. Obi-Wan would step in front of Ahsoka, shielding her from the piercing yellow eyes of Anakin as he steamed with anger. Obi-Wan would prepare for an attack, glancing back at Ahsoka, who with tears rolling down her face would nod in agreement. Anakin would then launch an advance, swinging at Obi-Wan with his great power, but with Obi-Wan deflecting each strike. Ahsoka too would ignite her blades as several powerful blows on behalf of Anakin would be dealt her way. The two Jedi and their former friend would battle across the platform, with Ahsoka keeping pace, but with it being abundantly clear she was less talented than Anakin. Obi-Wan would utilize his all-defensive form to stave off any major attacks by Anakin, as Ahsoka would pick up the pieces and fight where she could. The overwhelming power of Anakin would be too much though, and every attempt to launch an offensive on Ahsoka's behalf would be quickly put back in its place, forcing her into a defensive stance. Anakin would reach out with the Force, seizing Ahsoka by the throat and attempting to break her neck, but Obi-Wan would meet him with a blade lock, forcing him to break his concentration and release her. Ahsoka would fall to the ground, gasping for air, as Anakin pushed with all his strength, forcing Obi-Wan to his knees. Anakin would then release the blade lock, swinging once more at the blade of Obi-Wan, with all his remaining power, forcing his lightsaber from his hand. Anakin would then raise his lightsaber, prepared to deliver the killing blow, but would suddenly be halted. An intense heat and pain could be felt within his chest, as Anakin would lower his head to see two green blades protruding from his chest. It would be Ahsoka who finally brought down her former master. Ahsoka would then deactivate her sabers, catching Anakin as he fell to the ground, but there would be no words. The tears would be streaming from Ahsoka's eyes, and Anakin would have died a slave to the dark. I now want to explain briefly why I think it would play like this, and more specifically, why I think Anakin would beat Obi-Wan in this situation. Originally, the Mustafar fight in Revenge of the Sith is all about Anakin losing control, and Obi-Wan fighting smart. Obi-Wan chooses to backpedal in that duel until finding a desirable location where he feels he has the advantage over Anakin, which is actually what ends up happening. You see, across the board at the time, Anakin is more powerful than Obi-Wan, with the exception of his brains and fighting tactics. He's faster, stronger, a better duelist, and more gifted in the Force. But Obi-Wan knew all of this, and thus played on his advantage. In this situation, with another factor thrown in, it would play very differently, and since Obi-Wan too had another factor to take into account, it would drastically change the fight. I believe, ultimately, the duel would be more contained to a single place, rather than over the course of a whole mining facility, as the only reason for that was Obi-Wan waiting for optimal placement, and for Anakin to tire, so Obi-Wan could eventually beat him. In a straight confrontation, which I do see occurring in this situation, I believe Anakin would beat Obi-Wan, but luckily, Ahsoka would be there to prevent his death and save him. At this point, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan would retrieve Padme and seek her medical attention as soon as possible, meeting back up with the defeated Master Yoda. Eventually, Padme would give birth to two healthy children, named Luke and Leia, but die in the process. The child Leia would be gifted to Bail Organa, who would care for her and give her a good life. The boy would go to his aunt and uncle on Tatooine to be looked after by Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka would leave to attempt to aid her remaining brothers and sisters of the Order and help them escape the clutch of the newly formed Empire. Across the galaxy, Palpatine would have felt the death of Vader and become enraged, disappointed with the destruction of such promise, and now burdened with the task of finding another apprentice. But despite all of this, Palpatine would be glad, as most of the Jedi were gone and the galaxy was his, for the time being at least. So anyway guys, that's how I think it would all play out. Be sure to tell me how you think it would change the universe, and feel free to suggest more what-if scenarios. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button, it really helps a lot. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.